Greetings, brethren, and a happy Sabbath to you on this 26th day of April 2014 on the pagan Roman calendar, the 26th day of Abib. Let's see, what month are we? We're 26th day, first month on God's holy sacred calendar. And we just, friends, let me tell you where we're going today. I've got a very special report I'm going to introduce. It's a report written by an Ambassador College alumnus who attended Bricket Wood between 1964 and 1967. I'm going to introduce his article today, go through some portions of it, play a little bit of a video by Mr. Herbert Armstrong on a subject related to the article on Elijah, but I want to open up today with a news story because just hours ago something significant happened. And after we do the news story, I'm going to put the chart up and mention the relationship of this news story to the chart that we use from Revelation for determining which news stories we play during newscast or during nightcast during the week. At least 80 people have been killed and hundreds of villagers left stranded in a devastating flash flood, not a flash flood, in devastating flash floods in northern Afghanistan. Tim Allman has this report. Let's take a look at that and I'll be back.
As if life wasn't tough enough for the people of Afghanistan. This is Badghis province. The floodwaters came and went. This was just some of the mess left behind. It's not yet clear how many people were killed here, but they are already burying their dead. Our shops and houses have been destroyed, said this man. So far we've not received any help from the government. But some help is on the way. The Afghan military ferrying survivors from the most dangerous areas, although they don't appear to have anywhere to go. All this happened so fast, without warning.
After offering morning prayers, the flooding started. The water brought up 35 bodies. The flooding started from early morning and it's still going on. Around 7 villages in our area were destroyed by flooding. All the people were standing on rooftops and they were evacuated by Afghan army helicopters to safety.
Entire villages were submerged in remote areas of the north. These images show how desperate the situation had become. A family trapped on the roof of their home, eventually rescued by a helicopter. These children are now safe, but officials say many more are still in danger. Tim Allman, BBC News.
Okay, thank you, Tim Allman, for that report, although a very a devastating report of sorts. And here we go. Finally, our camera shots were not changing like they should have just yet, but we had to get everything warmed up, including me. Friends, I've been heavily into the paper and article that I'll be bringing a little portion of to you today that has some things in it that quite interesting, quite revealing, potentially shocking to some people, but something definitely we should all be aware of as a possibility of something that God may do even this year. I'm not going to set a date, but it could happen this year, the way news is going. That's just one news story that shows you. Let's put that chart I mentioned up on the screen. The fourth column over represents the fourth seal of Revelation 6. It's depicted there in Revelation 6 as a pale horse whose rider is named Death, alongside whom, the horse and its rider, alongside rides Hades, hell, the grave, in other words. And this is a horse of death. That rider, again, his name is Death, the rider of that pale horse. And Jesus Christ described the activities, the conditions, the characteristics of this horse, this deadly horse, as being those of loimus, disease epidemics, plagues, the pestilence of the plagues of Egypt, pestilence. He also described the condition of this horse between the famine and the Great Tribulation to be a time of seismic activity, seismic conditions, commotions in the air, such as gale force winds of all kinds, and commotions on the ground, such as earthquakes, and that includes floods and wildfires and tsunamis and volcanic eruptions, any kind of commotions on the ground that can cause, that are seismic, related to the earth, on the ground or in the air. And we've got another story. Let me skip something. I've got some news that begins the week from last Sunday, which, as the world celebrated Easter. But I want to tell you about this happening related to the very volatile news event in the Ukraine and in Europe. This report from this morning, the BBC's Natalie Antilava speaks to people in the town of Slavyansk in eastern Ukraine, which is under full control of pro-Russian militants. During the course of her reporting, she was threatened and had a gun put to her head. Rebel militia continue to occupy buildings in a dozen eastern cities, defying the Ukrainian government in Kiev. Let's take a look at this intriguing, volatile news story from the Ukraine.
This town is under full control of pro-Russian militants. They're deciding whether they want to speak to us and let us film openly here. The fact that we're from the BBC isn't very helpful. Russian media is very welcome here. Western media, not so much. A few days ago, an American journalist, Simon Ostrovsky, was held at one of the checkpoints here, beaten up and held captive for several days. He's now been released, but he told me that they're holding several other journalists at the security building inside. And now their commander has confirmed that to me. He said that they are holding hostages, but he called them criminals. So now we're now told that we're not allowed inside, but let's go and see what people in this town think.
Есть люди, те, которые полностью поддерживают Киев, нашу власть, не хотят Ну, конечно, большая часть Восточной Украины хотят автономии и хотят присоединения к России.
I've been wondering if there is anyone in Slavyansk who actually supports Kiev. Apparently there is. We finally found someone who has agreed to speak to us. Yeah, let's go. Leaving Slavyansk in a bit of a hurry because I just had a gun put to my head by one of the self-defense men. We tried to speak to some people in one of the apartment blocks, and about 5 men with guns and uniforms came over, accused us of being American spies, checked us passports, said that we are telling lies, and kicked us out. Lucky they kicked us out. I can't tell you where we are, but we've come to a place to meet someone from the city who's agreed to speak to us anonymously.
И не хочется, чтобы весь город разбомбили, не хочется потерять ни имущество свое, ни родных, ни близких, ни друзей. И одновременно не хочется проснуться на следующее утро в другой стране. Таких людей, как я, преследуют, откровенно говоря. Если мои мысли, мои размышления на всю эту тему притесняются сейчас, я представляю, как мне будет трудно потом.
Как ты думаешь, Россия ведет войска?
Я-то надеюсь, что нет, но да, ведет. В принципе, у них нет выбора, так как в городе уже присутствуют русские военные, которые...
Русские военные?
Русские военные, да, находятся, плюс...
Откуда ты знаешь, что находятся русские военные?
Их можно определить по отличной амуниции, по выправке, по разговорам. То есть все в городе знают, что это не наши.
Friends, there's a little bit of the most up-to-the-minute news we have on what's happening in the Ukraine. And even though it's a Sabbath today, friends, it's not a time to stick our heads in the sand. We need to stay aware of what's happening, more and more so today as things are happening more and more rapidly, as this could be the year that the EU comes together. Could be. I'm not saying definitely it will be, but just keep watching the news. You should get a feeling yourself with God's Spirit as to just how truly, how readily, how much this could come together this year. Beginning of this week, while we're on some news, one more news story before we go into that article I'm going to go into, and then play a video or two for you. One from Mr. Armstrong, and the other maybe for the kids in us, your kids, the kids that are in us, kids from age 5 to maybe 105. I've got a cartoon-like video on the subject we'll be talking about from the article, and that Mr. Armstrong will be talking about in the little clip that I'll be playing from him. Relates to Elijah, I'll just tell you that much. But the beginning of this week, the world celebrated Easter, and I mean the world, even right there in Rome. Tens of thousands of people gathered in St. Peter's Square for an Easter Mass led by Pope Francis. The avenue leading up to the Vatican had been decorated with 35,000 flowers. After the video, I will tell you which tribe of Israel donated those flowers.
Iusei, ecce qui tollis peccata mundi, beati che accenanani vocati sunt.
Okay, that's probably enough of that. I don't want anybody who may be tuned in late to get the wrong idea of what we're doing here today on the Sabbath. This is news now from this week, the first day of this week, Sunday. It's not, even the Catholic Church acknowledges that Sunday, the day they hold Easter on, is the first day of the week. They don't even begin to claim it's a Sabbath day, although they have set it out to be a day of worship on the first day of the week. And if you Judaize and want to worship on the seventh day, the Sabbath, it was a time in the past you could have your head cut off, or be burned at a stake, or be tortured and killed in various different ways. But there's a little video news of what occurred on the first day of this week, 7 days ago here, that the world calls and celebrates as Easter, in honor of the old pagan god Ishtar. Now, who donated the 35,000 flowers that are on the avenue leading up to the Vatican? They were donated no less than by a tribe of Israel known as, this fifth one down here on our chart, the Netherlands. Let me bring this chart forward so you can possibly see this. If you count down from the top 5 where you see the number 10, that means the 10th born son of Jacob, who was born of Leah's 6th child, that was named Zebulun. He is the modern day Netherlands. Also a little bit of the tribe of Zebulun is also in South Africa, where the writer of today's article is. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to mention this tribe of Israel, which again donated 35,000 flowers that you saw in the video leading up to the Vatican. 35,000 flowers donated by the Netherlands. All right, now let me get that off the screen and be ready for the next thing that we are going to do. I hope that slide is going to show up. Friends, that's kind of shocking, interesting there a little bit that one video we showed you before this, during the course of her reporting, the reporter, the BBC reporter, was threatened and had a gun held to her head. Things over in the eastern cities of Ukraine are getting rather volatile over there. All right, now, I've got a thesis or an article written by a Brick of Wood student on why, this is the way he's titling it, why only Herbert W. Armstrong is the end-time Elijah. Now, the article will also cover Zerubbabel and Joshua, but I'm going to save those parts of it till another Sabbath in the future when I can get some slides ready for you and show you scriptures on the screen as we go over them, so we don't shoot off over anybody's head on covering this subject. I have to tell you, I feel that for the most part this article is extremely well written. The fellow who lives in Kansas, he doesn't want me to mention his name, so I'll just mention my Kansas friend, who sent me the link to this article. I want to thank you for that link. It's one of the first articles or links to an article you've sent me that I felt had some merit worth reading, since the last bunch of stuff I read from you that made me want to almost throw up and puke, and got into some areas and things with, that I couldn't agree with a brother on, because, well, I've gone into that in detail both here on previous telecast and with my friend from Kansas. But this one, a lot of merit, a lot of good things in it. Not 100%, mind you. There's one or two little things that I would take issue with, and I'll bring those up, and I'll bring them up just matter-of-factly in a way that allows you to make your own decision. You can choose whether you agree or disagree. But the subtitle of the article is Herbert W. In the subtitle, it makes a statement. The subtitle states, Herbert W. Armstrong claimed to be the final Elijah. This article proves that he was not only who he claimed to be, but that God ensured that no one else can be this end-time prophet. End quote. Now, I'm quoting the subtitle of the article by a Brick of Wood alumnus student who wrote this article and has given me permission to use this material, but he prefers that his name not be mentioned. So unless I accidentally mention his first name or something, we'll just call him and refer to him as an Ambassador College alumnus who attended Ambassador College in Brick of Wood from 1964 to 1967. You can see his name online if you read his article, which is online. He cites his name at the beginning of the article, and if I slip up and say his first name once in a while, I'll be careful and try to honor his request to not mention his whole name at least here, and I'll even try to be careful to not mention the first name, which might be a giveaway that he might prefer we not do. The article begins with a reminder that Daniel the prophet was told that certain prophecies given to him could not be understood until the time of the end. Even Daniel could not understand the prophecies that God gave to him to write down for us. And I think I have a slide on that, but it's not showing up. Let's see what's gone wrong here. Let me see if I can. None of my slides are showing up here. I had all these Bible scriptures for you, friends, and they're not showing. Oh, I know what happened. I put these in a GIF format, and our viewer requires either JPEG or FLV or some movie type format. So I blew that. I'm sorry. So I'll tell you what I'll do. We're going to have to abort this topic to next week because I I want you to have the benefit of being able to see the scriptures as I go through that. But I will do this. We'll go ahead and play the clip I have for you by Mr. Armstrong, a couple 3-minute clip on him mentioning the aspects of Elijah that I could find in one video. And, friends, what else will we do? And then I've got a little video that's a cartoon-like video on the history of Elijah from the Old Testament. I think if you're a child at heart, if you've got a young person there, who likes cartoons, or if you yourself, are still a kid at heart, like maybe it's a good idea to be a kid from age 5 to 105, maybe you'll enjoy this little cartoon too. It's maybe not the best. It's not a real Hollywood style wham movie, but it's maybe not even the best cartoon, not even a Warner Brothers what's the word I'm trying, quality cartoon, but it still sticks pretty close to what happened in the Bible, cites scripture, and it's a good review of Elijah in the Old Testament, which I think is a good idea for us to get a picture of who Elijah was, the real, the real Elijah, the original Elijah that is to come in a spiritual way and at the end time, but the one that already was here and lived a real life, similar to how Jesus Christ came and lived in the flesh. Elijah lived in the flesh in the past, and I got a little cartoon that'll give us a picture of his life. But first, let's go to Mr. Armstrong speaking about the end time Elijah and how it relates very much to him. It relates to Mr. Armstrong. Mr. Armstrong?
Now, another prophecy I would like to read you in Malachi, the 4th chapter of the book of Malachi, beginning with verse 5. Behold, I will send you Elijah the prophet before the coming of the great and the dreadful day of the Lord. It's talking about the day of the Lord, and before that time, someone will come. Elijah the prophet lived a long time ago. He is gone and dead. But someone will come in the power and the spirit of Elijah. John the Baptist came in the power and spirit of Elijah, but he was not Elijah, preparing the way for Jesus Christ at his first coming. He was a voice crying out in the physical wilderness of the Jordan River and preparing the way for the physical Jesus, born of the human Virgin Mary and laid in a manger because there was no room in the hotel, coming in his humility and coming to his physical people, Judah, and to the physical temple at Jerusalem at that time built of stone and wood and precious stones. But now a voice is to cry out before the second coming of Christ, coming in power and glory as the King of kings and the Lord of lords, to rule the earth and to replace Satan and displace Satan until he will not be here to deceive the world any longer, and to put an end to this trouble and this slaughter and this great tribulation that is coming upon this world. And some voice has got to come in the spiritual wilderness of modern Babylon or confusion and call the people out of this Babylon, as you read in the 18th chapter of the book of Revelation. Come out of her, my people, and prepare the way for the spiritual Christ to come in power and glory as the King of kings and the Lord of lords, and to come to his spiritual temple, the church that will rise and meet him in the air, changed from mortal to immortal, their faces shining as the very sun, their eyes as flames of fire. I tell you, my people, we're coming to that time, and it's time for a voice to cry out and to tell the people that we're coming into that time, and to say, come out of this Babylon of religious confusion of our day and believe the Word of God.
Okay, friends, Mr. Armstrong could cry out indeed like a trumpet and show my people their sins. And most of you tuned in today for the Sabbath. Friends, I know we've all just come out of the days of unleavened bread the week before this. And so we've been doing that annual thing of putting sin out of our lives. We do want to keep it up the rest of the year. And friends, with Mr. Armstrong, having, as he said here himself, been the Endtime Elijah, and this report that I'm going to be going through shows from Scripture how we could be seeing him again, alive. I don't want to scare anybody too much, but this article goes through Scripture that very much supports that possibility that God might resurrect Mr. Armstrong before the whole ball game is all over, during the time of the two witnesses, or at the beginning, just before that, and him be one of them. Very much a possibility. As you watch this cartoon, which I hope is going to show up okay, it should. As you watch this cartoon on the life of the fleshly Elijah, who God called the prophet Elijah, as you watch this little cartoon video on his life, you'll see that there was a situation when he was staying with that widow that God had him go stay with, who was about to die, her and her son, because they were in a famine. Their food was nearly exhausted. And the boy did die while Elijah was there. And Elijah took him upstairs, cried out to God, and through that prophet Elijah, God brought back the life of the widow's son. You'll see that in this little cartoon. So resurrecting a person from the dead is not outside the realm of possibility for God. I mean, while Christ was here on the earth, he did it with Lazarus and with others, and God resurrected others while Christ was, at the time of Christ's death, there were some that were resurrected from their graves who had been in their graves for years, and in the future, in spite of what the world teaches about, dying and going to heaven immediately or the other place, to hell. When people die, they sleep. It's as if they know nothing until one or another resurrection, until either the first resurrection, if they were called in the spring harvest, and if not, until the second resurrection, at which time at the first resurrection, those who come up in the first resurrection, they'll come up with their flesh, their mortality changed to immortality. The second resurrection, as Ezekiel clearly shows, the sinew and the bone, the flesh will come back on the bones and the sinew, and the lungs fill with air, and the veins and arteries with blood, and it'll be a physical resurrection back to physical human flesh and blood life at the second resurrection. So God could do that, but I don't want to go into it without the article too much. I do want us to go into the, let's go to the little cartoon video. I hope it's going to play for us. Really cute little cartoon, but it's factual on the life of Elijah the prophet.
Now Elijah the Tishbite from Tishbe in Gilead said to Ahab,
As the Lord, the God of Israel lives, whom I serve, there will be neither dew nor rain in the next few years, except at my word.
Then the word of the Lord came to Elijah.
Leave here, turn eastward and hide in the Kerith ravine, east of the Jordan. You will drink from the brook, and I have directed the ravens to supply you with food there.
So he did what the Lord had told him. He went to the Kerith ravine east of the Jordan and stayed there. The ravens brought him bread and meat in the morning, and bread and meat in the evening, and he drank from the brook. Sometime later, the brook dried up because there had been no rain in the land. Then the word of the Lord came to him.
Go at once to Zarephath in the region of Sidon and stay there. I have directed a widow there to supply you with food.
So he went to Zarephath. When he came to the town gate, a widow was there gathering sticks. He called to her and asked,
Would you bring me a little water in a jar so I may have a drink?
As she was going to get it, he called,
And bring me, please, a piece of bread.
As surely as the Lord your God lives,
she replied,
I don't have any bread. Only a handful of flour in a jar and a little olive oil in a jug. I'm gathering a few sticks to take home and make a meal for myself and my son, that we may eat it and die.
Elijah said to her,
Don't be afraid. Go home and do as you have said, but first make a small loaf of bread for me from what you have, and bring it to me, and then make something for yourself and your son. For this is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. The jar of flour will not be used up, and the jug of oil will not run dry until the day the Lord sends rain on the land.
She went away and did as Elijah had told her. So there was food every day for Elijah and for the woman and her family. For the jar of flour was not used up, and the jug of oil did not run dry, in keeping with the word of the Lord spoken by Elijah. Sometime later, the son of the woman who owned the house became ill. He grew worse and worse, and finally stopped breathing. She said to Elijah,
What do you have against me, man of God? Did you come to remind me of my sin and kill my son?
Give me your son.
Elijah replied. He took him from her arms, carried him to the upper room where he was staying, and laid him on his bed. Then he cried out to the Lord,
Lord my God, have you brought tragedy even on this widow I am staying with by causing her son to die?
Then he stretched himself out on the boy 3 times and cried out to the Lord,
Lord my God, let this boy's life return to him.
The Lord heard Elijah's cry, and the boy's life returned to him, and he lived. Elijah picked up the child and carried him down from the room into the house. He gave him to his mother and said,
Look, your son is alive.
Then the woman said to Elijah,
Now I know that you are a man of God, and that the word of the Lord from your mouth is the truth.
Okay, friends, we'll have part 2, part 3. We'll show more of this in the future weeks ahead on the Sabbath. And I'll be going through, beginning next week, I plan to pick up with the first part of that article that I mentioned a few things to you about that's going to be extremely interesting to you, I guarantee. It was one of the most exciting things I've read in a long time. It's a very well-written thing, and you do want to see it with the scriptures. And I'll convert those into something we can put on the screen behind me and show you, so that as we go through the subject of the end time Elijah, which I agree with the writer, was definitely, and I agree with Mr. Armstrong, definitely Mr. Armstrong was indeed the end time Elijah. And the article goes into whether the end time Elijah will also be the same person as the end time Zerubbabel, and who will be the end time Joshua. I don't want to get into any heretical thing, and I'm only going to give you what, as the article points out, what is likely and possible. We'll emphasize, the article may say definitely in cases, but we're going to emphasize it in a way that says it's only a possibility, And, you have to watch and see how some things go. But you should be aware of it, because if God does it, what's said in this article we're going to be going through, if God does what's said in the article, you don't want to be caught off guard and overwhelmingly shocked. You want to at least have it in the back of your mind that, hey, there were some people who said this was a possibility, and lo and behold, look here, it happened. Well, friends, that's all I have for today. Hey, you know what? We haven't sung a certain hymn in a long time. That was one of my predecessor in this chair for the Sabbath, Mr. Robert Collins. It's one of his favorite ones to play. It was Mr. Armstrong's mother's favorite psalm. It comes from Psalm 133. It's not in the Purple Hymn Book, but maybe some of you who are Purple Hymn Book royalists will overlook that fact, because it is an outstanding song. Mr. Armstrong liked the song very much, and it was sung in some video where you can see Mr. Armstrong in the video. In fact, maybe if I have that particular video, I'll try to show the one with Mr. Armstrong in the video during this hymn. We'll sing that. That'll be all we're going to do this Sabbath, friends, and I hope you'll join us again next Sabbath, either live or from the archive, where you can watch it anytime on demand. And even on Facebook you can watch them now, and through YouTube. And hope you'll watch this one next week on the subject of Elijah. And we'll continue with part 2 of the little cartoon on Elijah. And we're going to have more of Mr. Armstrong speaking, and I've got some new software that will enable us, if I can work it, and I'm going to be working with that next week to see if I can, that will put Mr. Armstrong in a multitude of versions of languages, so that people around the world can watch some of the messages, the outstanding messages that he brings. And by people around the world, I mostly mean brethren, but some of these were public broadcasts he did, so they were for the public too. But let me put a slide up on the screen just for a moment. This will be the full version slide of all 7 of the seals from Revelation. I'm just putting it up while I go over to the button selection that will enable me to pick out the hymn that Mr. Armstrong might be visible in, where we sing that Psalm 133, and you can see Mr. Armstrong. I hope I can find that version of it. It may be this one. Let's try it. Let's all sing together. Thanks for joining me today, friends, and God willing, the creek don't rise. We'll be back next week with more on the subject of the Endtime Elijah, and we'll be having more video by Mr. Armstrong. And then I hope you'll join us during the week for Nightcast that airs for a half hour, usually a half hour, sometimes longer if there have been several days between a program, like between Thursday night and Sunday night. And if there's been a lot of news, sometimes we'll go a little longer, sometimes a full hour on Sunday night. But normally a half hour, Sunday through Thursday night, 5:30 p.m. Pacific time for the live time. You can figure it in your time zone from there. And 6:30 Mountain, 7:30 Central, 8:30 Eastern. It's 2:30 in the afternoon in Hawaii, 4:30 in Alaska in the afternoon, 1:30 midnight in the UK, Greenwich Mean Time, on the following day. That's the live times. And then anytime, you can watch it anytime on demand in the archive, the Nightcast program. It's on a different channel than what we're on now. We're on the Sabbath service channel now. That evening program of the daily news related to the Bible and prophecy is on the Nightcast channel. Some of you know that. You watch that regularly. I appreciate you being there when we're live. I appreciate you praying that things go well while I'm live, because once in a while things goof up, and sometimes I goof up. And if you can pray for me when you see I might be having a problem, hey, Father, help Steve out, I'll appreciate that, because it was not my idea originally to take the hosting of this program. When I first helped begin this program, 50-year Alabama minister Robert Collins was alive and was its initial host from day one, and I was super happy to be on the backside of the camera like I sometimes worked in the television studio. My first 2 years as a student, I worked behind the camera, meaning not necessarily behind. Well, sometimes I was behind the camera, especially when we did things from the auditorium. I'd have the mezzanine camera sometimes because I could get those shots and pan them and change the lighting that had to be done at the same time in a way that amazed some of the engineers that I was able to do that. Just God gave me some skill from day one. Coming out of the Coast Guard, my first job was at a television station in Miami, Florida. And some of those old guys gave me some of the hardest shots. I know they were over behind the back curtain laughing. I would be assigned some of the most impossible shots that anybody could get. And here we had old timers, old Union men. They wouldn't give these hard shots to. They gave them the easy shots. They gave me the greenhorn. Never worked in television before, come out of the Coast Guard. I'm blessed to have a job in a television studio, and I'm given some of the hardest camera shots, 1, 2, 3 different shots during 30-second commercial, switching focus, switching tilt, switching pedestal position, having to run the thing all the way up and tilt all the way down, change the focus, come down, be on a far shot, change the focus. And some of these controls then were manual. It's a good thing because the slow automatic controls, you couldn't have done it fast enough as it needed to be done. After blowing it 6 or 8 times, I just said, God, I'm about to lose my job if you don't help me, and I need the help. I had the confidence and faith right after that, and I was being threatened and chewed out by the director upstairs, and they've got their client there who's paying for this commercial to be videotaped, and I'm being chewed out by the director, and I just silently pray and say, God, they couldn't have given me a more impossible shot. It doesn't even seem fair, but let's show them what you can do through one of your people. Help me get this shot. And next time we rolled, boom, I got it. Of course, my supervisor heard. That was on a Sunday night, by the way. They were doing that. My supervisor heard about it the next day. He works Monday through Friday. He said, hey, you blew that shot a whole bunch of times. And I said, yes, sir. They gave me the most. Here's what the shot was, sir. 1, 2, 3. I told him what it was. His look on his face was, you're kidding. They gave one man all those shots in 30 seconds between other shots. And they gave a newbie that shot instead of one of the old timers? Yeah, that's what they did. But, sir, on the last go, I got the shot. I did it. He was like amazed. I don't know how anybody, that shot should have been changed. I don't know how anybody could have got such a sequence of shots in such a short moment of time, changing pedestal, changing tilt, changing focus, changing zoom. Why am I telling you all that? I'm telling you all that because we're television, and I appreciate it when you watch live because things go wrong when you're live, and God can intervene and He can help. And if you can't watch live and you're watching from an archive, you can pray ahead for us and say, hey, I like this program, the fact that somebody goes through the news, spends the day going through the news, so I can just watch a half-hour video and see what I should see of the day's news and then be an active part of that news as Jesus Christ tells us to do. He doesn't just tell us, friends, to watch world news. Listen to what He says in Luke 21, verse 36. He does tell us to watch it, but He tells us to do something else related to the watching of world news. Let's take the verse in context. Flip there with me if you will, or if you want to. If you don't want to, I'll just read it to you. Verse 36 of Luke 21, where Christ says, watch you therefore and pray always that you may be accounted, not necessarily, don't pray the words, account me worthy to escape, although there's nothing wrong with asking that either. There's a comma after, and pray always. Watch you therefore, comma, and pray always, comma. And by doing this, by the watching and actively praying, that you may be accounted worthy to escape all these things that shall come to pass, and that you'll be able to stand before the Lord. But by watching and praying always, watching world events and praying and saying, hey, God, this is happening over here. I know you can be aware of it, but let me mention it to you, and I got an idea. These people are starving. There may be some food over here you could get to them, or or whatever the world event is, just showing you care and have concern, or even saying, oh God, that's terrible to see, please bring your kingdom, so that you put more heart into the part of the prayer where we pray, thy kingdom come. That's not supposed to just be, thy kingdom come, about to go to bed now, and thy will be done, and thanks for the daily bread today, Father, and give me a good night's sleep. No, friends, it's supposed to be, thy kingdom come. I want it to come, and I want to be part of it. And Father, this is happening over here. This is happening over there. Come on, get involved, and let's speed this thing up. There's been a lot of delay, brethren, in God bringing the events about that will enable the Great Tribulation to come and the kingdom to come following that. And you and me may be part of the reason for that delay. You ever think about that? Some may be saying, why is God delaying all this? We ought to look in the mirror maybe and say, hey, what am I doing or not doing that's causing God to delay this thing? That could be it. Friends, that's going to be it for today. We're going to sing that hymn together. I hope you'll sing along with us, and we'll let that be the close for today. And then, again, thank you for joining me on this Sabbath, and hope you'll join us every night, Sunday through Thursday night, for Nightcast. And then you're welcome to be back again here next week for when we go into more fully the Endtime Elijah and have part 2 of the cartoon on the Endtime Elijah. All right, sing along time. Let's all sing together. How good and how pleasant it is for God's people to dwell together. How good and pleasant it is for God's people to dwell together in unity, from Psalm 133.